Hello, good morning, guys. Hope everybody's doing great. How was your sleep? Did you sleep nice? Furthermore, many more styles. The morning is so beautiful today. There is a silence in the silence. The morning is very beautiful, calm, serene. A little bit of cold. Transformed, patronized and transformed. It was transformed, devotional, style devoted, and sculptures of Gandharvas are found in different locations of South Asia. Gandharvas are celestial musicians carrying different types of musical instruments according to Hindu mythology. They are musicians of Lord Indra. Lord Indra's heaven, they are also mentioned in the Vedic era. Literature, anatomy of Indian music. Now before one delves, so in the ancient period the term swara was associated with the recitation of the Vedas. Over the time the term was used to define the note or scale in a composition in the Natya Shastra. Bharata divided the swaras into a scale of 22 notes. Currently, the notational system of Hindustani music, Hindustani and Carnatic music. Hindustani music is defined by the following abbreviated swaras. Sa re ga ma pa ga ni sa. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni. 7 swar. So the 7 swaras swar together called Saptak or Sargam. He described each pitch using the names mentioned in the table in the right. Sorry. Name of the pitch is Shadja, tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, subtonic. So this is it: mediant, submediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, subtonic. Okay, tonic, mediant, and dominant. Tonic, mediant, and tonic, supertonic. There is no subtonic. There is median, then submedian, dominant, subdominant, tonic, subtonic. Oh, there is subtonic as well. Subtonic, median has 2 medians, median. Alright, so there is only one supertonic, which is re. That is subtonic, supertonic. So Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara, Madhyama, Panchama, Dveta, Nishad. Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara, Madhyama, Panchama, Dveta, Nishada. The swara differs from a shruti. A shruti is the smallest gradation of pitch. There is a swar and a shruti. So the swar differs from a shruti. differs from a Shruti. The Swara differs from a Shruti. Shruti is the smallest gradation of pitch. Smallest gradation. How do I write this gradation? Gradation of pitch representing the quality of frequency. Quality of frequency. There are 22 Shrutis or microtones, of which only 12 are audible. These 12 audibles include the 7 Shuddha Swaras and 5 Vikrit Swaras, Saregama Padani and Shuddha Swara. Vikrit Swar, 5 Vikrit Swar and Shuddha Swar. Rag. The rag comes from the Sanskrit word ranj. The word rag. The word rag comes from the Sanskrit word ranj, which literally means to delight or to be happy and satisfy a person. Ranj, delight, ranj, the rag from the basis of melody. The ragas form the basis of melody, which the tal becomes the basis of the rhythm or rhythm. Basis of the rhythm. Now each melodic structure of the rag has something similar to a distinct personality, subject and a mood evoked by the sounds. The next para says the basic element necessary for the working of a rag is the note on which it is based. According to the number of notes in the rag, there are 3 main jatis or categories. Audav rag, it's a pentatonic rag, which contains 5 notes. Then a hexatonic, which is Shadavar rag. After that, there is a Sampurna rag. What is a hexatonic rag? Hexatonic rag, which contains 6 notes. Heptatonic rag contains 7 notes. Heptatonic, hexatonic, pentatonic, supertonic, tonic, subtonic. So rag is neither a scale nor a mode, but it is a scientific, precise, subtle and aesthetic melodic form with its own peculiar ascending and descending movement. Ascending and descending movement evoked. A rag is neither a scale nor a mode, but it is a scientific, precise, subtle and aesthetic melodic form with its own peculiar ascending and descending movement, which consists of either a full octave or a series of 5 or 6 or 7 notes. So there are 3 major types of rag or rag bhed. Shuddha rag, Hence, every rag should contain the basic 5 notes. Amongst these ragas, the king is the principal note. The king is the principal note on which the rag is built. King, and this is called Wadi, and it is used most often in the composition. This is called the Wadi, and it is used most often in the composition. Composition, composition. So composition, and the next important note is the queen, which corresponds with the fourth or fifth note, which corresponds which note is the queen, which corresponds with the fourth or fifth note in relation to the principal rag. Corresponds Hence, every rag should contain the basic 5 notes. Amongst these ragas, the king is the principal mode on which the rag is built. This is called Wadi, and it is used most often in the composition. The next important note is the queen, which corresponds with the fourth or sixth note in relation to the principal rag. Principal. That's noun. And the principal rag. So the second most important note of the rag is called Samvadi. Wadi and Samvadi. So all notes in the composition other than the Wadi and Samvadi are called Anuvadi. Finally, the notes that are not present in the composition are called Vivadi. Furthermore, the ascent of the notes means that each note is higher, ascent and descent. Now, the ascent of the of the notes means that each note is higher than the preceding note. For example, Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni. The ascent is called the Aroha. A-R-O-H-A, Aroha. Similarly, the descent of the notes is called the Avroha. Aroha and Avroha, where each note is lower than the preceding notes. For example, Ni, Da, Pa, Ma, Ga, Re, Sa. Now, depending on the ascent and descent of the notes, ascent and descent, the ragas can be divided into the 3 speeds or laya: Vilambit, Madhya and Drut. Although there are 72 melas or parental scale on which rags are based under Carnatic music, there are 6 main rags under Hindustani music repertoire, and all these are music repertoire. And all of these are time and season specific and evoke a particular type of emotion, ras. Now, Bhairav, Indol, Deepak, Megh, Shri, Malkhosh. Shri, Megh, Deepak, Hindol, Bhairav. Down, morning, night, late night, evening, midnight. Megh, Bhairav, down, dawn. dawn, morning, night, dawn, morning, night, late night, evening, midnight. Any season, spring, summer, rainy, winter, 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 rainy, summer, Deepak. Spring, Hindol, rainy is Megh. Now peace. Peace evokes sweetness of a young couple, that is Hindol, morning, spring में evokes sweetness of a young couple, compassion, courage, and Malkos is midnight, veer or brave, gladness, courage. The reason behind the creation of rag was to evoke emotional response in the performer. And the audience. These emotions, which are evoked through the singing and playing of instruments, which are evoked through the singing and playing of instruments, are called ras. The rasas have also been described as an aesthetic delight. Aesthetic delight. The rasas have also been described as an aesthetic delight, as they are consciously made to evoke an emotion through someone else's art, even though they are free from the limitations of personal feelings. Initially there were 8 rasas, but later another rasa called the Shant ras was added to make 9 ras or Nauras. These are Shringar, Hashya, Karuna, Rodra, Bhayanak, Veer, Adbhut, Vibhats, and Shant. Shringar, Hashya, Karuna, Rudra, Bhayanak, Veer, Adbhuto, Vibhatsya, Shant. Shringar, Hashya, Karuna, Rudra, Bhayanak, Veer, Adbhut, Vibhats, and Shant. Love, humor, laughter. Pathos is Karun. Pathos, anger. Pathos, it's pathos, yeah. Peace or calm, disgust, wonder, bravery, horror, humor, laughter, love, pathos. Pathos. Now, Shringar, Hashya, Karuna, Rodra, Bhayanak, Veer, Adbhuta, Vibhatsu, Shanta, love, humor, laughter, pathos, anger, horror, bravery, wonder, disgust, peace or calm. Tal. The rhythmic grouping of beats. The rhythmic grouping of beats are called tal. These rhythmical cycles range from 3 to 108 beats. According to the concept of tal, musical time is divided into simple and complicated meters. This theory of time measurement differs between Hindustani and Carnatic music. Hindustani and Carnatic music, the uniqueness of the concept of tal is that it is independent of the music that accompanies it, and has its own divisions. The tempo of tal, which keeps the uniformity of the time span, is called the laya. Laya. which gives the uniformity. Time span, the accompanied by. The uniqueness of the concept of tal is that it is independent of the music that accompanies it and has its own divisions. The tempo of tal, which keeps the uniformity of the time span and is called the lay, and several musicologists have argued that there are more than 100 talas, but only 30 talas are currently known, and even within that number, only 12 are actually used. Different kinds of recognized and used tals are Dadra, Karba, Rupak, Ektal, Chaptal, Teental, and Chotal. Amongst these music composers most often use Teental, which has 16 beats. Amongst these music composers most often use Teental, which has 16 beats. Amongst these music composers most often use Teental, which has 16 beats. Unlike Hindustani music, Carnatic music has a much more rigid structure. The tal are made of three components: Lagu, Dhrutam, and Anudhrutam. So unlike Hindustani music, Carnatic, Carnatic, Carnatic music has a much more rigid structure. The tal are made of three components: Lagu, Dhrutam, and Anudhrutam. There are 35 original talas, and each of these can be further split into 5. Hence, there are in Carnatic music the most prominent in Adital. Tal is a system of classification of raga into different groups. Currently in Hindustani classical music, thus Thaat classification has been adopted according to the Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, 1860-1936, one of the most important musicologists in the field of North Indian. Unlike Hindustani music, Carnatic music has a much more rigid structure. The tala are made of three components: Lagu, Dhrutam, and Anudhrutam. Now there are 35 original talas, and each of these can be further split into 5 khatis. Hence there are 175. 35 plus 5 talas in Carnatic music. The most prominent tala in Carnatic music in Adital. Thaat is a system of classification of ragas into different groups. Currently in Hindustani classical music, a 10 Thaat classification has been adopted according to Pandit Vishnu Narayan. According to Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, 1860-1936, one of the most important musicologists in the field of North Indian classical music, each of the several traditional ragas is based on or is a variation of 10 basic thoughts or musical scales or frameworks. A thought can only be sung in Arohi, as the notes are composed in ascending order. A thought should have 7 notes out of the 12 available: AVAI, LABLE. Available 7 Shuddha Swaras and 5 Krita Swar, and they should necessarily be placed in ascending order. The 10 thoughts are Bilawal, Khamaj, Bilawal, Khamuj, Kafi, Ashwari, Bhairavi, Bhairav, Kalyan, Kalyan, Marwa, Purvi, and Todi. Thaat has no emotional quality, unlike raga, and it is not sung. The ragas produced from the Thaat are sung. The ragas produced from the Thaat are sung. Thaat is system of classification ragas in different Hindustani classification. Thaat classification has been adopted. According to Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, 76. One of the most important musicologists in the field of North Indian classical music. Each of the several traditional ragas is based on or is a variation of 10 basic thoughts or musical scales or frameworks. A thought can only be sung in Arohi as the notes are composed in ascending order. Okay. Now let's just sum here. Each rag has a specific time at which it is performed. Each rag has a specific time at which it is performed, right? This is because these notes are considered to be more effective at that particular time. This is so because these notes are considered to be most effective or more considered to be more effective at that particular time. The 24 hour of the day. The 24 hours of the day can be divided into two parts. The 24 hours of the day. 24 hours of the day can be divided into two parts. Yeah, it can be divided into two parts. From 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. The Purva Bhag and the ragas sung in this period are called Purva Rag. From 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. called the Uttar Bhag, and the ragas sung in this time from are called Uttar Rag. They are called Uttar Rag. Furthermore, the Saptak also changes according to the time of the day. For example, in the Purvang period, the Saptak is from Sa to Ma, Sa, Re, Ga, Ma. In contrast, in the Uttarang period, the Saptak is from Pa to Sa, Pa, Dha, Ni, Sa. Other components of Rag, the gradual exposition of the Rag that emphasize on Vadi, Samvadi and other silent features of the Rag in the slow tempo. This is exposition. Other components of Rag, the gradual exposition of the Rag that emphasize on the Vadi, Samvadi and other silent features of the Rag in slow tempo is called the Alap. It is typically sung at the beginning of the Rag at the time of the performance. In North Indian classical music, it is usually sung in the akar, that is without pronouncing any syllables, only using the A sound of the vowels. Secondly, the musical composition can be divided into two parts under Hindustani classical music. First part of the composition maximum used is Sthai, Mukhda, or Antara, Ant or Mukh, Mukh and the Ant, the face and the end, the starting and the end, right? So the Sthai, which is the Mukhda and the Antara. So musical composition, you can say the musical composition we are talking about. The musical composition can be divided into two parts under Hindustani classical music. The gradual exposition of the rag. The gradual exposition of the rag that emphasizes on the wadi, samvadi and other silent features of the rag in slow tempo is called an alap. It is typically alap. It is usually sung in the akar, that is without pronouncing any syllable, only using the ah. It is usually sung in the akar, that is without pronouncing any syllables, only using the a sound of the vowels, v, o, w, e, and s vowels. Secondly, the musical composition can be divided into two.